Today we are stripping away the excuses. We're looking at a text that's been described as a kind of pocket-sized operating system for the human experience. We are unpacking James Allen's absolute classic, As a Man Thinketh.
An operating system really is the perfect way to describe it.
Oh,
Allen isn't interested in comforting you with, soft platitudes.
yeah.
He's presenting a strict, almost mathematical argument. He is arguing that we are not creatures of circumstance. We are the master weavers of our own destiny.
I love that phrase, master weaver.
Yeah.
It sounds so grand, so empowering.
It does.
But before we get carried away with how cool that sounds, we have to look at the flip side. If I'm the master weaver and the tapestry of my life looks like a tangled mess,
Then that's on you.
well, yeah. That's on me, isn't it?
Precisely. And that's where the book begins. It sets a tone that is both severe and hopeful. Allen says the mind is constantly weaving two garments.
Two garments.
The inner garment of character and the outer garment of circumstance. And his core thesis, the thing we really need to wrap our heads around, is that you can't separate the two.
Okay, so let's unpack this physics of thought, because usually we think of thoughts as these private, fleeting things.
Right.
Like, I can sit here and think about eating a donut or snapping at my neighbor, but if I don't do it, it doesn't matter.
It's a victimless crime inside your head.
Yeah.
Allen would say that is a dangerous misconception. Organic imagery to explain the physics of the mind. He says, act is the blossom of thought, and joy and suffering are its fruits.
So the action isn't the start of the process, it's actually the end result.
Exactly. The action is the flower opening. The seed was planted long before that.
And what's fascinating here is that he applies this even to things we think are just accidents.
You mean like spontaneous acts when you just lose your temper out of nowhere?
Right. We love to say, I don't know where that came from, or I just snapped.
Allen argues there is no such thing as a truly unpremeditated act. That snap judgment, that was the result of hidden seeds of thought you'd been burying in your mind for weeks or months or even years.
And when the opportunity or the stressor arrived,
The flower just bloomed.
that is slightly haunting. It means we're all walking around with a garden in our heads that we might not even be paying attention to.
The garden analogy is absolutely central to his work, and it's the best way to visualize this. Think of your mind as a plot of land.
Okay.
You can cultivate it intelligently, right? Plant flowers and fruits. Useful, pure thoughts.
Or you can just let it run wild.
Or you can let it run wild. But here's the crucial point that I think most people miss. The garden never stops growing.
Right, there's no pause button on the soil. It's always producing something.
No, if you do not deliberately plant useful seeds, useless weed seeds will fall in. They will take root, and they will produce their kind.
So there's no neutral state.
No, you are either actively creating a noble character, or you are passively allowing a bestial one, to take over just by neglect.
So laziness isn't just doing nothing. It's actually allowing weeds to take over the factory.
Precisely. Passive neglect is an active choice in the garden of the mind.
Okay, so that's the internal state. We get the garden. But here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a little controversial. Allen bridges the gap between what's in our head and what happens to us in the real world. He drops this line. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves.
It is the hardest pill to swallow in the entire text.
I believe it.
We live in a world where we love to blame the environment. The economy is bad, my boss is a jerk, my luck is terrible.
Right.
Allen just says circumstance does not make the man, it reveals him to himself.
That is a bumper sticker that would make a lot of people angry in traffic.
It would.
Circumstance reveals you. But let me play devil's advocate here, because Allen actually addresses this. What about the honest man who is poor and suffering, and the dishonest man who is rich and successful? We see that all the time.
We do.
Does that prove circumstance is just random luck?
He tackles this head on. He calls it a superficial judgment. He argues that we're just looking at the surface.
You see honest and dishonest and stop there.
Right. We say, oh, he's honest, but we don't know what's creating his inner life. Allen suggests that the so-called honest man who fails may have other vices: vanity, bitterness, a lack of focus.
Or maybe even a deep-seated fear of money itself.
Exactly. So just being nice isn't the only variable in the equation.
Okay. And the rich, dishonest guy.
Well, he might be dishonest, but he might also possess virtues like energy and industry and intense focus. The universe, according to Allen, pays out on every aspect of character.
So you get paid for your focus, but you also get taxed for your dishonesty.
It's not a zero-sum game. It's a complex calculation of every single seed you've planted.
To make this real, Alan gives us these 3 very specific case studies. I want to run through them because they are so vivid. First, he talks about the poor man.
Yes, this is the man who is wretchedly poor. He's desperate for better home comforts. He wants a nicer life. But what does he do?
He shirks his work. He tries to deceive his employer because he feels like his wages are too low.
Right. He thinks, I'm not getting paid enough, so I'm going to slack off. It's a very common rationalization.
Very.
And Alan's verdict is just brutal. He says this man is totally unfitted for prosperity. He's actually attracting deeper wretchedness.
Why?
Because he's dwelling in indolent, deceptive, and unmanly thoughts. You cannot build a successful reality on a foundation of deception. He's keeping himself down.
Wow. Okay, then there's the rich glutton. This one feels like a caricature, but also very real.
The man who's the victim of a painful, persistent disease, he pays huge sums of money to doctors to cure him, but
He won't stop eating rich, unnatural foods. He wants the health, but refuses to sacrifice the gluttony.
he wants the outcome without the discipline.
He wants to have his cake and eat it, literally.
And Alan says he is unfit for health because he hasn't learned the first principle of a healthy life: self-control. He's buying medicine while poisoning himself.
And the third one, which feels very relevant to the corporate world, is the employer.
The employer who adopts crooked measures to avoid paying fair wages. He cuts corners to maximize profit.
Then what happens?
When he eventually goes bankrupt and loses his reputation, he blames the market. He blames circumstances.
He has no idea that he is the sole author of his condition.
None. It really circles back to that core idea: circumstances reveal you, they don't dictate you.
And that revelation isn't just financial or social, it's physical. We have to talk about the body.
Yes.
This section was fascinating. I think we all kind of know that stress causes headaches, but Alan takes the psychosomatic connection to a whole new level.
He does. He says the body is a servant that obeys the mind, whether the commands are chosen or, automatic.
And he uses very strong language here. He says thoughts of fear can kill a man as speedily as a bullet.
I mean, that is intense. As speedily as a bullet. It sounds like hyperbole.
It does.
But maybe it's not. Think about the physiological effect of chronic anxiety. It demoralizes the entire system. It leaves the body open to disease.
He argues that people who live in fear of disease are the ones who get it.
They are literally instructing their body to be weak.
He gives these great visual examples of faces, too. He talks about a 96-year-old woman.
Yes, the woman with the bright, innocent face of a girl, and he attributes that not to a skincare routine, but to a sweet and sunny disposition.
Versus the middle-aged man whose face is drawn into inharmonious contours.
Right, the wrinkles drawn by folly, passion, and pride. It's the idea that your face eventually freezes in the shape of your most common thoughts.
If you spend 40 years scowling internally, your face will eventually scowl permanently.
You can't hide your mental history from your face.
So his prescription for health isn't just about food. He explicitly says, change of diet will not help a man who will not change his thoughts.
Exactly. Clean thoughts make clean habits. If you purify the fountain, the mind, everything downstream, including the body, gets purified.
Okay, so we've cleaned up the garden. We're trying to fix the body.
Yeah.
But we still need to do things in the world. We need to achieve. And Alan has a very specific view on this. It starts with purpose.
He calls aimlessness a vice, which is a strong word.
It is.
He believes that drifting through life without a central purpose leads to petty worries and fears. And surprisingly, he says those petty worries are just as destructive as planned sins.
Because they lead to failure.
Because they represent weakness. He says in a universe evolved by power, weakness cannot persist. You need a centralizing point for your thoughts.
You need to focus that mental energy or it just dissipates.
It does. And once you have that purpose, what's the enemy?
Doubt and fear.
He calls them disintegrating elements. If you imagine your effort as a straight line towards a goal, doubt and fear break that line.
They make it crooked and ineffectual.
Right. He says he who has conquered doubt and fear has conquered failure.
There is a very radical idea in this section about oppression. And I want to make sure we get this right because it flips the usual narrative on its head.
It really does.
Usually we look at a tyrant and a slave and we say, hate the tyrant, pity the slave. That's the standard moral position.
It is. But Alan takes a step back and looks at the spiritual law governing both of them. He says the oppressor and the slave are cooperators in ignorance.
Cooperators?
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds almost like victim blaming if you take it out of context.
It does, but look at what he's actually saying about the mental state. He says they are afflicting themselves. The oppressor is misapplying power, which is a form of spiritual weakness. The slave is yielding to weakness.
So Alan argues that a perfect knowledge would see the suffering in both states.
Exactly. To be truly free, you have to conquer the weakness that leads to being a slave and the selfishness that leads to being an oppressor.
So you can't just fight the external oppressor. You have to rise above the internal weakness that accepts the situation in the first place.
It's about total self-mastery, which brings us to his law of sacrifice. This is his rule for success. He puts it very simply.
What is it?
He who would accomplish little must sacrifice little. He who would achieve much must sacrifice much.
So success is basically a measure of what you've given up.
Specifically, it is the measure of the animal thoughts you have sacrificed. If you want to succeed in business, you have to sacrifice your desire for leisure and indulgence.
And if you want to succeed spiritually, you have to sacrifice your ego and selfishness.
You cannot hold on to your lower nature and rise to a higher station simultaneously.
That leads perfectly into the section on visions and ideals. Because if we are going to sacrifice, we need something to aim for.
And Alan calls dreamers the saviors of the world.
This is the most poetic part of the text, I think.
I agree. He mentions Columbus, Copernicus, Buddha. He says their visions weren't just fantasies. They were the seedlings of realities.
The oak sleeps in the acorn. The bird waits in the egg. I love that imagery.
It's the promise that your dream is actually a prophecy of what you can become. But again, it requires work.
And he tells the story of the youth in the workshop to prove it.
Yes, let's paint that picture. There's a young man. He's poor, uneducated, working long hours in an unhealthy workshop.
Sounds bleak.
It is bleak. Most people in his position would just be angry or resigned. But he has a beautiful vision of a refined life.
So he doesn't just complain about the workshop.
No. He mentally builds up an ideal condition. And crucially, he utilizes his spare moments. He develops his latent powers. He doesn't waste his time on frivolous things.
And eventually the workshop it falls away.
Like a cast-off garment, it no longer fits him. He has outgrown it internally, so his external reality has to shift to match his new internal size.
He becomes a master of forces and a worldwide influence.
It's the ultimate started from the bottom story, but the starting line was his mind.
And the destination wasn't just money or fame. It was something Alan values above all else.
Serenity.
The calm man.
Yes. This is the last lesson of culture. After you have conquered your thoughts, weeded the garden, and achieved your purpose, you arrive at calmness.
He describes this person as being like a shade-giving tree in a thirsty land.
Isn't that a beautiful image? We all know people like this. People who are poised, steadfast, serene.
Right. It doesn't matter if it rains or shines, they remain the same.
And Alan says this calmness is more valuable than gold. It is the indication of ripened experience.
It's the proof that you understand how the machine works. You don't fuss or fume or worry.
Because you know that you are the master weaver. You know that cause and effect are in your hands.
You stop fighting the waves because you know you're steering the ship.
Exactly. Tempest-tossed souls. In the ocean of life, the isles of blessedness are smiling.
So we've journeyed from the weeds in the garden, through the physical effects of fear, past the necessity of sacrifice, all the way to the Isles of Blessedness.
It is a complete journey, a full operating system.
What I love about this deep dive is that it removes the ability to play the victim. And that is scary.
Very scary.
If I'm unhappy, I have to look at the seeds I planted. But it's also the most hopeful thing you can possibly hear.
Because if you planted the weeds, you can also pull them out. You can plant corn instead of nettles. The law works both ways.
So if you change your thoughts,
the universe has no choice but to change your circumstances. It might not happen overnight, but the law is absolute.
You will be what you will to be.
That is the promise.
So, to you listening right now, stop looking at your bank account or your job title or even the news for a moment. Look at the conversation happening in your own head.
Because that is the drafting table for your future reality.
And ask yourself, if my life 5 years from now is the fruit of the thoughts I am thinking right now, do I like the harvest I am preparing?
That is the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us. Start planting those better seeds today. We'll see you next time.